Project presents This Week in Shakespeare for the week ending Monday, July the 16th, 2018. Hola, Bardophiles. This is Bill Walthall, and welcome to the 204th episode of This Week in Shakespeare, a video release brought to you by the Bill Shakespeare Project. This is our weekly opportunity to let you know about the latest and greatest in Willie Shakespeare headlines, coming out every Tuesday because, well, Tuesday is News Day. The goal here is to hit you with a quick blast, no more than 10 minutes tops of Bard-related news. Plus, we'll try to serve up some historical dates for what were the past 7 days of the year. So, this week's news stories included: Page 6 in Australia ran the story of actor Geoffrey Rush and his preemptive pulling out of a 7-week run as Malvolio in a production of Twelfth Night for Melbourne Theatre Company, set for November. All of this as he prepares a defamation lawsuit against the Daily Telegraph newspaper for printing a story that he had acted inappropriately with an actress back in 2015. The Daily Standard in London ran the announcement by Sir Ian McKellen that his upcoming performances as King Lear at the Minerva Theatre in Chester in September will be his final Shakespearean role. Broadway World ran a piece on the trend of English Shakespeare companies recently gender-swapping roles to make them female, and not just the small ones, but Hamlet with Michelle Terry, Glenda Jackson in Lear, and Cassius in Caesar. Great stuff. An op-ed in the National Review mourned, well, I'm not quite sure what the heck it was mourning. The subheadline was, "New York's Public Theater Continues to Vandalize the Bard." And yet, there was no review of this year's offerings of Othello and Twelfth Night. Instead, the reviewer seemed to go on a screed about how everything is ruined by politics. And yet, I'm not sure what he was referring to. The 1990s Nazi-fied Richard III with Ian McKellen? No, that got a positive review from him. And that wasn't New York's Public Theater anyway. And he says that the New York Public Theater is filled with clods who fill up the stage with their Muppets and political hacks. Dude sounds bitter to me. So this Texas-based writer, did you even go to New York, man? To him, I say, lighten up, Francis.
Lighten up, Francis.
Lighten up, Francis. Thus ends my screed. The Montreal Gazette previewed the upcoming tour of Shakespeare in the Park's gender-bending Romeo and Juliet, in which both lovers are women, playing in various parks in the Montreal area over the next month. The Hartford Courant previewed the upcoming outdoor summer season for the Greater Hartford, Connecticut area, including Pericles by Greater Hartford Shakespeare Festival, Pericles and Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare Academy, Love's Labour's Lost by Elm Shakespeare, as well as 3 Hamlets and a Tempest, which kind of sounds like the beginning of a joke. 3 Hamlets walk into a tempest. The Times-Union reviewed Macbeth by Shakespearean Company running through August 5th, calling the stripped-down 9-actor production a disappointment, bloody but soulless. The Berkshire Eagle also reviewed the production in Lenox, Massachusetts. This review was more positive, though, calling it muscular and propulsive. The News Miner of Fairbanks, Alaska reviewed The Merry Wives of Windsor by Fairbanks Shakespeare, running in our 49th state through the weekend, calling the show inventive with gags that are masterfully set up. The folks over at PlayShakespeare.com reviewed Richard III by Colorado Shakespeare Festival, running through August 11th in Boulder, giving the production a 4 of 5-star review and saying it makes the 400-year-old script feel almost prescient with respect to current events, and that makes the show and its eponymous villain all the more terrifying. And finally, the Los Angeles Times reviewed a new independent film version of A Midsummer Night's Dream, set in current-day LA, saying that despite it being a well-worn story, darned if it doesn't prove to be a disarmingly effective visual, vibrant frolic. The film is on a limited run in Los Angeles. I checked this out myself just this past weekend, and I've got a review for it on the blog coming Thursday. But here's a Reader's Digest version. If you want a very meta, very quirky, very self-aware little indie that practically grabs you by the face and screams, "Look at me," then your prayers may have been answered. Now let's take a look back on the last 7 days and how they relate to Shakespearean history, both his and the history in his plays. On July 10th, 1460, Henry VI was captured by Yorkist forces at the Battle of Northampton, a major battle in the Wars of the Roses. According to some, Henry had a nervous breakdown, his second around this time, and when he was returned to London, Parliament passed the Act of Accord, which named the man who had been named Protector during his earlier breakdown, Richard of York, as Henry's successor. The battle is pretty much completely ignored by Shakespeare in the third part of Henry VI. On July 11th, 1989, famed Shakespearean actor Laurence Olivier died. Olivier was an actor on both the stage and screen, and on the latter starred and directed classic film versions of Henry V, Hamlet, and Richard III in the 40s and 50s. On July 12th, 1472, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, married Anne Neville. Anne's first husband was Edward, Prince of Wales, the son of Henry VI, who had been killed by Yorkist forces at the Battle of Tewkesbury less than a year earlier, either by Richard's men or Richard and his brothers, depending on who you believe, historians of the time or Shakespeare, respectively. On July 13th, 100 BCE, Julius Caesar was born. There's some argument to this, with some saying that it was July the 12th. So if that's not precise enough for you, we do know that on this date in 1940, actor Patrick Stewart was born. Now known more for Captain Picard in Star Trek: The Next Generation and Dr. Xavier in the X-Men films, he's actually quite the Shakespearean actor, with a tenure at the Royal Shakespeare Company from 1966 to 1982, and most recently in a kick-ass Macbeth from 2007. July 14th, or thereabouts, is the date on which Romeo and Juliet begins. The nurse says that Juliet's 14th birthday will be on Lammas Eve. Lammas Tide is August 1st, so Juliet's birthday is July 31st. The nurse also says that this is a fortnight and odd days away. 2 weeks and an odd number of days, and 17. 31 minus 17, 14. And that would make the next day July 15th. And according to the average annual weather in Verona, Italy, that day is amongst the hottest of the year, when the mad blood is stirring, and characters will not escape a brawl. On July 15th, 1207, King John expelled the Canterbury monks over their support of the Archbishop of Canterbury, leading ultimately to his excommunication from the church in 1209. On July 16th, 1377, Richard II was coronated. Edward III had died 1 year after his son, Edward, Black Prince of Wales, Richard's father, had died. Richard was crowned king at just 10 years old. And that was your Week in Shakespeare, brought to you by the Bill Shakespeare Project. Now, if you enjoyed this news review, tell a friend and hit the subscribe button to keep from missing these news, reviews, and history videos. For our daily blog and previous Twiz episodes, including links to the news stories we've covered, as well as the real Bill Shakespeare Project podcast, check us out at thebillshakespeareproject.com. And we'll catch you next week.